Hello and welcome back to the Erin Cruz Show. We have on with us a special guest. His name is Gregory Wrightstone. He is going to talk with us a little bit about the climate hoax, climate change, wildfire fiasco, that big report that just came out. They're trying to scare people, folks, and what we need to do is get level-headed about this, look at the facts, get back to the facts. Thank you for coming on the Erin Cruz Show, Greg.
Oh, thanks for having me, Erin. Glad to be here.
Well,
but I'm a little bit angry after I'm in Dallas now, speaking at a conference. I read the report coming over on the plane, and it's worse than it's awful. It's a manifest, an environmentalist manifesto.
It's huge, right? I mean, it's giant.
Yeah, and it's 1,600 pages.
Yeah.
And I've just when we get off here, I'll finish it up and I'll post it. But I've got a new blog talking about that. And one of the what I do is I've selected one part of this new national climate assessment. Now, bear in mind, this is a government mandated assessment that's supposed to occur every 4 or 5 years, whatever. And it's the last one was pretty bad, and this one has doubled down on climate alarmism. And it's really bad. But what I've done is selected one item to talk about and expose, which is really the poster child for this climate report, is forest fires, wildfires. It's on the cover of the summary review. It's on the back cover of the summary review, and it's interspersed throughout the entire overview, chapter 1 of this report out of 1,600 pages. Stating as a fact that forest fires are increasing, and they're increasing because of man-made climate change. And the facts, the science, the data are stark. It's absolutely clear-cut, and all the fire experts agree that actually, contrary to what your listeners might or viewers might think, fires have been in a long-term decline. They just have. And it's not me saying that. I'm using the government's own sources for the United States. The United States, the National Interagency Fire Service or Center shows, and you can go on that and Google that yourself and find out what they say and look at the data. And what I did was, I last night as I was digging into this, I was saying, why do they keep saying that forest fires are increasing when they're decreasing? And they had one chart. And what they did was they took a spot of area burned from 1984 to 2016 and said, oh, well, look, area burned has increased. And it has slightly. What they forgot to mention, no, they didn't forget, it's intentional misrepresentation of data. The data went back to 1928.
Right.
Did they show that? No. What they showed was from 1984 to 2016. If they had showed the entire data set, which a scientist is obligated to do, the scientific process says you don't cherry pick data.
Right.
What they did is cherry pick the data, because back to 1928, what you would have seen was that area burned has declined by more than 75% since 1928. A significant decline. No, and the number of fires have decreased by similar numbers. It's crazy.
I mean, it's outrageous. It's irresponsible, and as a matter of fact, this report is only done every so often, right? Every few years,
right?
And we rely on this data to make future projections and planning and other things, right? It should be accurate.
Yeah, according to the Paris, if we look at according to Bjorn Lomborg of the University of Copenhagen, he's estimated that if the full enactment of the Paris Climate Accord would remove $100 trillion in wealth from the developed nations and transfer that to the undeveloped nations. It's a power grab. It's a transfer of wealth from the haves to the have-nots. And even if we according to his work, we've looked at if we implemented this, spent $100 trillion, well, what would we get? 0.3 of a degree Fahrenheit decrease in temperatures. I don't think that's a very good investment. And if I'm going to spend,
and would we get that? Would we really get that? Would that really? Would that really happen? Do we know that? Is there any guarantee?
No. No, there's not. But I mean,
It's throwing money at it.
I know that.
But
Yes,
here,
it is. It's throwing.
But okay, so this is my concern. If you don't mind me just
Yeah.
looking at this, because we're talking about 1984 to present, pretty much. And in this case, we have government who could have very likely here in the United States, in particular, could have been California, interfering with different processes, which might also have increased fire burn areas in some ways. Because they're mismanaging lands, they're mismanaging forests. I mean, in terms of the north of California, they're very, very concerned with what's not happening, what the government is not doing as a result of different regulations and the, EPA and all these kinds of things. So,
Yeah.
this is a concern. It's a very big manipulation.
If you go to my web, if your viewers go to my website, inconvenientfacts.xyz, I've got a page devoted to forest fires.
We'll put that below right here for you. So.
Okay, that'd be great. And then, if also on my blog, I've got a specific blog on the California fires, and you'll see there the chart from CAL FIRE documenting that forest fires in California, the number has declined by 50% over the last 30 years. And that goes back, the latest, I think, was 2016 data. But the number of fires have decreased. Now, during that time, if you look at area burned, it's slightly increased, which means that each fire in California has roughly doubled. And what we see is, the size of fires and probably the intensity of fires has increased greatly. If you look, the Sierra Nevadas and the mountainous ranges now controlled by the U.S. Forest Service are case in point. If you go back and look at photographs from the 1850s after the gold rush, you'll see that there are large grassland areas now that are completely forested because fires had swept through there almost on an annual basis. So you'll see that the pine trees, the boughs, the first branches were maybe 20 feet in the air. And that's because as these low-intensity fires would sweep through, they'd go through and the trees would survive. What we have today is this huge accumulation of undergrowth trees, and now when you have a fire, it's much more intense, and actually the trees die. And before the grass fire, they'd sweep through and everything was fine, and the wildlife would survive. And so it's really a big change in these forest management practices. And the Sierra Nevada Conservancy says that there are 5 times too many trees per acre today. Now think about that. Mm-hmm. The second, this is an interesting fact you may not have thought of, but the second greatest soil moisture loss is due to transpiration of the trees. In other words, the trees are, all plants breathe in and out, right? And during that process, there's a huge amount of moisture loss. During that, if you have 5 times too many trees per acre, those trees are now competing for that scarce soil moisture in the soil. So they're competing and exacerbating an already bad arid condition there. And it also leads, with all these trees, the Sierra Nevada Conservancy says it's leading to burr beetle infestation because they can move between trees easier. So when you get, especially in the, perhaps not in the Sierra Nevadas, but throughout the West, the bark beetle has been bad with killing trees. Now you got a large stand of densely packed trees that are dead, all right, just waiting for a spark.
Right, just waiting. I mean, it's prime real estate for fires. And, this is part of the issue is I think that people are frustrated with, as I'm hearing, is that the government is telling us they want our money for these different accords and different climate fixes, right? But yet they're not doing their job in making sure that these lands are kept up and managed. Now, what do you think is a solution here? Because we have to get at the truth, right? The facts.
Well, that's going to be difficult because the media is controlled by leftists and pro climate change. Well, I believe in climate change. Okay, it's happening. It's just not us. But the media is dominated by these alarmists that believe that we've got catastrophic man-made warming, and it's just not so. So what we've got to do, how do you fight that? Doing like I do. I've got a a really powerful tool that we're in development right now. We're developing a smartphone app for my all of my 60 inconvenient facts in the book. You'll be able to pull up, and I'm going to pull it up here for you, but you're going to have something like this on your phone. You're going to be able to pull up 60 of the most impactful charts that you need to dispute this. Excuse me, let me take a drink here. That you'll be able to go that way if your idiot nephew from Boulder tells you at Christmas dinner that polar bears are going extinct, you can go, oh, wait a minute. Here's a chart. Right, here's a chart of 60 years of polar bear data that show they've been increasing for 60 years. And you know what? It's fully sourced. You'll be able to go here. And it's important for your viewers and people to have not just a chart, but a chart that's referenced and sourced. What's the chart? Because you can post anything and make a chart and say anything. But instead, what I do is I provide highly referenced source data from peer-reviewed articles, studies, NASA, NOAA, government sources, and they'll all be here, and you're going to have that data in the palm of your hands.
So we can't just take a small snapshot. We can look at the big picture, and we can actually have the information.
Absolutely. So we're excited about that. It'll probably be available in the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Well, that's wonderful. That's so wonderful to hear. I want to tell you, thank you so much for coming on the Erin Cruz Show, Gregory. We want to make sure and have you back after you have your app done and you have some updates for us on some of the things that are happening across the world, because really this is a big issue. They have the leftists all up in arms about these things, and people need to keep level-headed and get the real, true information. Really quick before we end the interview, could you give people, I'm going to put it down here in the comments, but could you go ahead and give people your website?
Inconvenientfacts.xyz. Check out my YouTube channel. I got some pretty cool videos there. And that's Inconvenient Facts. If you go to YouTube, I got a great one on witch hunts in Europe, the relationship between the late Middle Ages witch hunts and temperature. Really interesting.
Well, folks, there you have it. Gregory, he is trailblazing. He's going to give us all the information that we need to know to combat the lies of the left and to get truth out to the people in America. Thank you again, Gregory, for coming on the Erin Cruz Show.
Good night. Thank you.
To hear more and to learn more on how you can make an impact or about the Erin Cruz Show, visit us online at erincruz.com. That's ERINCRUZ.com.